Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan's Sage Dynamics, and this is my review of the Oracle Defense 2311. As you already know, I'm pretty much 100% Patreon exclusive at this point. I put out about one video a month here on YouTube. This video has already been previously seen by my Patreon supporters. If you don't want to support me on Patreon, that's absolutely fine. You're going to see the occasional video, of course. I'm still going to put that out there, but most videos go to Patreon and they only are ever seen on Patreon. Occasionally, like this video, I do put it out to the general public. So if you guys want to support me, you can head on over to patreon.com, check out Sage Dynamics, go ahead and become a supporter. You get videos nobody else sees, and as well as a monthly drill challenge, which always has a cool prize. This year I'm doing 12 months of my favorite guns. Last month somebody got a Langdon LTT RDO. This month is a Beretta A300 Ultimate Patrol. Next month, don't know. Or I should say, in regards to when you see this video, January was, then February was, then we don't know what March is going to be. So if you guys want to check it out on Patreon, that's cool. If not, it doesn't hurt my feelings at all. Now, to the review of the Oracle Defense 2311. Lots gone down since the initial impression and, of course, the final 2,000 round review. Big name is they changed their name from Oracle Arms to Oracle Defense. As you guys are familiar with this gun, and if you're not, it's a 2011-esque firearm. This one being the full-size 5-inch that takes Sig P320 magazines, and it shares a lot of commonalities with a 2011 or a double-stack 1911, but not a complete comparison of parts or necessarily features or even aesthetics. So what you're getting is a single action only that feeds off of Sig P320 magazines in the, I guess, ergonomics and aesthetics of a 2011 or double-stack 1911. It shares a lot of similar features, being that the frame itself is steel, but the polymer is a grip module that is removable and replaceable. It does extend a little bit further forward than some of the other guns in this category that are out there. You've got cool little accelerator or thumb rest points for muzzle control or recoil management for high rates of fire, and you can change out the grip module if you wanted to go to a compact size. It's something you can get directly from Oracle Defense. The big standout as far as controls go, and it's subtle but it's cool, is I have an ambi slide release, which is something that no other that I'm aware of 2011 or double stack 1911 offers. And of course the magazine release is reversible because it uses a Sig P320 magazine release, which is super cool because, as some of you guys know, those of you who are left-handed, of course, 1911s traditionally don't have a reversible magazine release, and left-handed releases are hard to come by, although they are out there. Other features, it has a gigantic flared magwell. The magwell actually incorporates part of the grip surface itself, so in the hand, to me, and I have average size hands, I guess, it makes it feel almost like a compact in that regard, because to me it's right up there against the pinky. I didn't expect to like the magwell, but I ended up liking it quite a bit. Of course, you've got a full dust cover with accessory rail, and then you have the optic mounting system. So when you get the gun, it comes with a replaceable front sight if you need it, based on height to optic to plate relationship. And it comes with multiple optic plates that are irons forward, although I'm sure you'll be able to get irons rear if that's something that you want in the future. RMR, DPP, Holosun, K, RMSC footprints are available. It's got a night fusion tritium front sight if that's something that you want. And the rear sight notch is more of a U versus a traditional right angle block. Of course, this is something that someone brought up in the platypus video, and it's something I meant to address and didn't. It's kind of a one-off gun. So parts commonality, there's going to be some shared commonality with guns that already exist, but not completely, right? So if you think about it, Glock's a one-off gun too, but they're an established brand that have been around for decades at this point. So finding aftermarket parts as well as OEM parts are not a problem. With the OA 2311, that might be an issue going down the road. So right off the rip, if you will, it might be a good idea to order those parts that commonly wear out. If you're going to get one of these, because as we all know, back in the not so recent past, the Hudson handgun, which later became the Daniel Defense, although there aren't a lot of commonalities between the Hudson and the Daniel Defense, from what I understand. A lot of people bought that gun, and then when that company disappeared, they weren't able to get their guns fixed. Some people who sent their guns in to get fixed never got them back. And of course, parts commonality, the market didn't really address that gun. It wasn't around long enough for the aftermarket to say, okay, these guns are selling really well, so let's start making accessories and parts and things like that for them. So you are taking a risk with the Oracle Defense 2311, just like you are with the platypus. There are part commonalities with 2011s, but it's not across the board. Another issue that I ran into immediately with this gun is holster compatibility. For concealed carry, it wasn't a big deal because I use filter floodlights, so which index to the light, not to the gun itself. That's a deep concealment or concealment type holster. For duty holsters, my only option, and it wasn't even specific for this gun, was a US duty gear that's actually made for a Beretta M9. The interesting thing about that holster is it seems to fit almost any gun I put in it. This gun isn't technically a 2011 in regards to the actual shape and thickness and overall profile, but it's also not a P320. So holster compatibility is definitely something that you have to question when getting this gun. Now, of course, Kydex makers are going to be able to hook you up, but as far as duty or retention type holster, there are no ready options available at the filming of this review. Of course, new optic system, new gun, got to be doing those drop tests, getting to it. I mounted a Trijicon RM09 and went ahead and got the review started. For the first 500 rounds, just kind of a get to know you, talked about this in the initial impressions, and then going on from there for the full 2,000 round review process. The overall presentation of the gun, the grip angle is fantastic. That initial dot acquisition, it's not dramatically so different from any other gun. It feels to me like it has a P320 grip angle, which I do really like the grip angle on that gun. And grip angles can be dictated by the way the magazine needs to feed. Controls are great. One thing that I did start to notice after a while is the ambi safety is, it's a feather sitting against a toothpick, if that gives you a good mental image. It doesn't take much conscious pressure at all to clear that safety, which isn't a big deal for me, but I would like a little bit more active resistance, and this, again, may be a one-off. And of course, for full disclosure, Oracle did send me this gun for the review purpose. Trigger is a traditional, it works in the traditional way that a 1911 or 2011 style trigger does, and it's straight to the rear, so there's no fulcrum point, which I do really appreciate. I love that style of trigger. I wish it was available in all guns, because I love flat triggers and I love triggers that press straight to the rear versus work on an angle. One thing that's interesting about the trigger that I started to notice, and I noticed it initially, but I was like, okay, maybe it's just a break-in thing or whatever, is the trigger break is consistent, it's clean, it's very short, but there's a very pronounced wall that feels like, it's not quite, I guess the best way to describe it, but it's the only way I can think of, is it's almost like a two-stage. It's not a two-stage trigger, so it's a single action only. But that's kind of how it feels, as I hit that wall and it takes a considerable amount of pressure over my normal press to go ahead and get that trigger to break. Which, again, not a big deal, but it's noticeable because you feel the initial uptake and it's subtle poundage in ounces. And then the wall, I don't want to say it's sticky, but it's a noticeable snap to push through, and then reset is fine. So it might just be the way this trigger behaves in the relationship of this gun. The fact that it's single action only, feeding off of Sig magazines, it's a proprietary, unique gun. There's nothing else that you can really compare it to, because no other gun does what this gun does in regards to the magazine, the shape, the overall profile, even though there's other single action guns out there. It's hard to compare two of them together. Even comparing two 1911s can be problematic. So trying to compare a 1911 type gun that's double stack feeding off Sig P320 magazines, there's nothing to directly compare it to, if that makes sense. The weight of the gun definitely aids greatly in performance as far as recoil management goes. Because that trigger has that pronounced kind of snap to it, and that's kind of how I'm going to describe it from here on out in the video, I'm not able to shoot this gun as fast, and we're talking hundreds of a second, as I am other guns, but even when you get a lot of recoil in this gun, it's completely controllable. The weight definitely helps there. It's sprung properly. And I'm shooting 115 NATO, regular 115 range ammunition, 124 gold dot, 124 range ammunition FMJ, 147, pretty much anything, you know, as usual, I had on hand to be able to put through the gun for the 2,000 round review process. Once I got it zeroed and got started with things and getting a feel for the gun, honestly, the most aggravating thing to me initially was that holster compatibility thing. And I understand that you shouldn't build a gun for a holster, but having ready holster available options would have been nice. And you see manufacturers do this before they release a gun, where they'll partner with somebody and they'll let you know, like, hey, this company makes holsters for this. And if it's a good enough relationship, and I'm not saying Oracle probably didn't try this, but you know, you've had companies right out of the gate pair with Safarland to make sure duty holsters are available. And because, for whatever reason, single action only 1911 style guns are becoming in vogue, if you will, for duty carry again, especially with staccato, It would have been nice if there was some compatibility options out of the gate for that, but I think it's something you're going to have to wait on based on the popularity of the gun. The 2311, it shoots really nice, and I think a lot of that is attributable to the familiarity I have with 2011s. I do shoot them quite a bit. It's not my go-to gun, but I do appreciate that trigger a lot. Not something I would necessarily carry, but that's kind of a different conversation. The weight, the ergonomics of the gun, I did not expect to like that mag well, but I ended up liking it a lot. Reloads on this gun are super smooth, and I think a lot of that plays to the fact that we're dealing with the P320 magazine, which, and it's weird to have this as a statement, but this just goes to how many different guns I end up shooting over a year and shoot regularly. I like the P320 magazine almost as much as I like the Beretta mag, and that means I have a favorite magazine style, and the P320 mags have easily become my favorites. The Beretta mags have always been consistently reliable, and the overall profile of the magazine, the angle that it presents in the gun, and how easily it ejects from the gun have always made it a favorite of mine. Plus, I've got more time with Berettas than anything else, although that's starting to change. So feeding off the P320 magazine, I think, was a brilliant move in this part. They easily could have gone with Glock or some other magazine, I'm sure, from the ground up, because that's how they designed this gun. But they went with that Sig mag, and I think that's definitely a huge plus. So the overall manual of arms on the gun was fantastic, no issues. The only particular possible issue, if this is a common feature on all of these guns, is that ambi safety is just so easy to click off. I would like a little bit more active resistance in there, a little bit more spring and detent tension in order to clear that. But for me, like I said, wasn't a problem. Another feature about this that some people might find particular, and this is more of an old man argument than it is anything else, is it uses an external extractor versus an internal extractor, and you see people argue about that with 1911s and 2011s. It extracted everything I shot through it. I didn't have any malfunctions whatsoever throughout the 2,000 round review process, so no factors there. Gun's very controllable. That, again, plays back to the weight. The optic mounting system, it does sit a little high because of the thickness of the plate, but it's not ungodly high like you see from some other guns in this same profile. And the fact that you get ready-made plates available, and the plate, at least on initial impression, seem to be really good. The one thing I don't like about the plate is there's no rear fence, at least for the RMR plate. And there may be other plates available later. So the optic has a front fence, which is useful for manipulation, one-handed manipulations, which of course I do. Arguably might be useful for drop testing as well, or sudden impacts to the front of the optic. But that no rear plate bugs me quite a bit. I like to have my optic sit in a shoe, in a fence, if you will. So it's not able to move even millionths of an inch during extreme manipulations or during recoil. So I wasn't worried about the RMR losing zero because of that, because plenty of RMRs are mounted without any fences at all on rifles and handguns, and it doesn't ever create an issue with that particular optic. But say you're using this RMR footprint for an optic that's not an RMR, it could create an issue as far as maintaining zero during extreme manipulations. Another little nitpicky thing, the grip module screws stick out quite a bit. It didn't really impact my grip or my technique, but I could see that being it's going to create a void in a grip, depending on how someone applies their hands to the gun. I could see that just a little bit of protrusion on that torque screw pressing up enough to cause a little bit of a pressure void in someone's grip technique based on their hand to gun size relationship. Again, not a problem I had, but I could see that being an issue. I wish those were a little bit more recessed. So throughout the 2,000 rounds, the gun performed fantastically. Of course, the big question coming up is how accurate is it inherently? Of course, that's shooter to gun relationship. And also, is the optic mounting system reliable? So using a known quantity like the RMR, I'm not really worried about breaking that optic. It's very durable. I'm not worried about it losing zero during drops because I've dropped plenty of RMRs at this point hundreds of times in different evaluations. So I use that RMR for the drop test. Every 500 rounds, went ahead and did a shoulder height drop test to see if that replication of, or simulation, if you will, I think replication is probably a better word for this, sudden force to the optic is going to create any issues. Again, this is not saying people are going to drop their guns, although they will, and they have. This is more to simulate a lot of sudden shock being delivered to the gun to see if it causes any issue with the plate surface, because we're tolerance stacking in this situation because we've got optic to plate and then plate to gun. So I was curious to see how good their plate interface system was. The footprint is really good on this gun, so I wasn't too worried about it, but keeping an open mind, of course, doing the test to find out. So before we get to the drops, here's a 5-round confirmation group fired from my normal zero distance of 25 yards, bag supported, shooting 124 grain gold dot. And then we have our drop tests, one shoulder height drop test every 500 rounds. So after 2,000 rounds, we have a final group to shoot. This is the final confirmation group I fired after that final drop test. 5 rounds, 25 yards, 124 grain gold dot, bag supported. I would definitely call that zero maintained. I think that the footprint, the plate, everything is good. I would like them to change the plate slightly, but I don't think they have a lot of room to do that. The optic does sit pretty far back from the breech face, which I find to be very valuable, but a little bit more attention could theoretically have been applied to the use of optics, and the overall length of the optic is going to be a factor in this. So you're going to be limited with what kind of optics going forward you can get without changing the overall profile of the plate. There is a lot of material between the optic front and the end of, or I should say the front of the plate, what I would consider to be a lot of excess material. So it looks like they could move that optic up and take that material and put it behind the optic and create an actual shoe. Someone might do that. They might do that. I would like to see that be a thing. As far as other optics that you're going to be able to get on this, I'm not necessarily sure. I could see room-wise you being able to get an acro or an EPS on it, or an MPS. But that's not something that's readily available at the moment at the time of the filming. So the gun's pretty accurate. It's durable. It's reliable. No issues over 2,000 rounds at least. Is it a contender for the category of 2011 or 1911-esque double stack 9mm? Well, you've got a lot of things going for you with this gun. Sig mags are a lot cheaper than STIs or MBXs or the other 2011 style magazines out there. It's not a proprietary magazine like you see with Bull or some of these other companies. So I can grab 320 mags for, sometimes 30, 35, 40 bucks versus 60, 75 and greater for 2011 mags. The parts issue, some of the parts are going to be SIG specific, some of the parts are going to be Oracle Defense specific. Some of the parts are going to be 1911-esque in nature. So there's kind of a mismatch, if you will, of different manufactured OEM parts that you're going to be able to put in this gun. Some of the parts are going to be, like I said, completely proprietary, so that could be an issue down the road if you're worried about Oracle Defense disappearing for whatever reason. I always avoid looking into products I review besides what the manufacturer states. I don't watch other people's reviews. I don't listen to other people's commentary on them because I want to be as objective as possible when approaching it. Now, after I make a video, after I finish my 2,000 round review process, I may go look and see what other experiences people had. But I had, because it's unavoidable. I did hear things where people were talking about spring weight, or they were talking about inconsistent trigger presses. Not the experience that I had. I'm getting a clean 4.5 pound break on this. I don't know if that's nominal for this particular gun. I don't know if that's the weight they're looking for, but that's kind of where I'm sitting with the trigger break. But it's such a short press, you don't really notice the weight. But I do notice that ledge of snap before the trigger breaks right there against the wall. It seems like that I have to apply a little bit more pressure there, so it feels a little bit light, and then it's got that wall, and then it snaps through. And I'm probably doing a terrible job of explaining that, because some people might be watching this and thinking, well, that's how triggers work. And I'm like, you're right, but it feels like I have to ramp the pressure, meaning I'm forcing to overcome a obtrusion, if you will, versus just applying the right amount of weight to pull straight through, if that makes sense. So there's like a final little bit of pressure I have to apply. That's really the only complaint I have about the gun, aside from the safety selector, I should say the safety. The safety paddle is not requiring any pressure really at all to clear off and be able to put the gun into a firing condition. But again, it's just 2,000 rounds, so I may feel differently, 3, 4, 5, 6,000 rounds down the road. And if I do, I'll let you guys know. But I think this is it's a great option for the fact that it exists. It's not something I would personally carry or pursue, I was going to get one to do a review anyway. Oracle was nice enough to send me one. I can't see me personally wanting to carry this thing or at least right now, advocating it as the option or an alternative for duty carry for any law enforcement who wanted to carry a single action only style gun, mainly because of the holster issue. That's going to be the biggest point of contention. And we don't know yet how readily available accessories and parts and things like that are going to be for this gun outside of a lot of those proprietary parts that they're going to have, and holster compatibility and other factors like that. So I think it's a fantastic gun. It shoots really well. It just wasn't doing anything significantly better for me than the 2011s I already own. And I don't want to do a comparison, but I want to bring that up because the question that people are going to ask is like, well, why should I buy this gun if I already have a Nighthawk or if I already have a Staccato? And I'll be honest with you, the answer is you shouldn't. This gun doesn't, the only thing this gun's going to do from the outside that those guns don't already do is the fact that it feeds off of 320 mags. And it's got an ambi slide release and it's got a reversible magazine release. Of course, ambi safety, and it's got the cool accelerator ledge on the frame, but those are small little features that are going to be very individual to the individual shooter. So there's nothing dramatically different about this gun than what you'd already get performance-wise from those guns that you may already have. Now, if you're getting into 2011s or 1911 double stacks, or whatever you want to call them, and you're curious about something that feeds off of magazines you already have, this is, if you already got Sig mags, this would be a great purchase. And arguably the modularity is really nice. Being able to change out that grip module to go to a lower capacity magazine for concealed carry. It's a heavy gun, man, so if you're carrying it, God bless you. You know, I used to, when I got my first Langdon Beretta, I was like, this is going to be my carry gun, because I already carry a full-size gun. And as soon as I holstered that thing up and headed for the door, I immediately turned around and said, nope, too heavy. So the weight does factor into things, and that's going to be a consideration for you, the individual. As far as mechanical standalone performance, the 2311 shoots reliably, it shoots accurately, manipulations are easy, ergonomics are there. There is going to be a slight hand relationship issue for some shooters where they feel like the swell at the base of the magwell is going to be too great for their hand, and I'm right there with you. I feel like it traps the hand a little bit too much, but not so much that I don't want to shoot the gun. I guess my big standpoint is cost based on features. If you already have, like I said, 2011s, this might not be something you pursue, but if you're curious about getting into something that comes out of the box ready for optic mountings, it feeds off 320 magazines, has a completely reasonable trigger, it's got advancements and controls over traditional 1911s or 2011s, the Oracle Defense 2311 would be a really good choice in that regard. And functionally, at least so far, it's a fantastic gun. Till next time, Patreons, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, train accordingly.